All rise. Part 2 of the Supreme Court of the State of New York is now in session. The Honorable Judge Marion Henry presiding. Be seated.
I hope you remember which side you're on.
Got it. Truth and justice.
Then we won't have any problems.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Mr. Ward, are you ready to call your first witness?
I am, Your Honor. The defense calls Malcolm Scorpio, Police Commissioner of the Port Charles Police Department, to the stand, please. Mr. Scorpio, did you hold the office of Police Commissioner at the time of Laura Spencer's arrest for the murder of Damian Smith?
No, I was appointed shortly thereafter.
Now, considering what you know of the evidence against the defendant, would you have recommended the case to the grand jury had you been?
That decision usually rests with the DA's office.
But it is customary that the commissioner make a recommendation, is it not?
Yes.
And what would yours have been?
I object, Your Honor. What Mr. Scorpio would or wouldn't have recommended before he was police commissioner is irrelevant.
Your Honor, we have established that the PCPD was under great pressure to solve the Damian Smith murder case.
The defense has established nothing of the sort,
So
Your
much
Honor.
so, in fact, that the lead detective interrogated the Spencer's young son without his parents' knowledge and without an attorney present.
That's a complete misrepresentation, Your Honor. Mr. Ward simply badgered Detective Garcia to prevent him from telling the truth.
You're both out of order. I'm warning you, counselors, I will not tolerate another dueling match between the two of you. The objection is overruled. Mr. Ward, you may ask the witness for his opinion, but then move on.
I will, Your Honor. Thank you. Mr. Scorpio, in your professional opinion, was there sufficient evidence against Laura Spencer to recommend the case to the grand jury?
In cases where the evidence is all circumstantial, my approach would be to build as strong a case as possible before bringing an indictment.
Then you don't consider the case against Laura to be strong enough?
Mrs. Spencer has already been arrested and indicted. Whether the evidence is sufficient is up to the jury to decide.
Is it true that case remains open and you are continuing to investigate the murder?
That's right.
Well, would that translate into a lack of faith on your part that Laura is the actual killer?
I object, Your Honor.
Sustained.
Withdrawn. No further questions.
Your witness?
Since you were not in office when Laura Spencer's case went to the grand jury, you were not privy to the inner workings of the investigation, were you?
Well, not then, but once I took office.
Just answer yes or no, please.
No.
So you were not present for the many hours of discussion, deliberation, and examination of the evidence by the police that led to Mrs. Spencer's arrest?
No, I was not.
So any opinion that you may offer now, in retrospect, is not based on the complete picture and is therefore essentially flawed and incomplete, isn't it?
Objection. Your Honor, the court has ruled on this.
Sustained. Move along, Miss Jensen.
Mr. Scorpio, since your appointment to police commissioner, you've made many changes, such as dismissing certain personnel, haven't you?
Yes, I have.
Was Detective Garcia one of those dismissed?
No.
Why is that, Mr. Scorpio?
Your Honor, do we really have to hear justification as to why Detective Garcia still has his job?
Is that an objection, Mr. Ward?
Yes, it was, Your Honor.
Overruled. But get to the point quickly, Miss Jensen.
Since you did not replace Detective Garcia, may we infer that you find him to be a competent police officer?
Extremely competent.
And there's no compelling reason to question his handling of the Damian Smith murder investigation?
No.
Or his decision that there was enough evidence to arrest Laura Spencer?
No.
Well, the grand jury certainly felt that there was sufficient evidence to hand up an indictment. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here, would we?
That's true, but an indictment doesn't necessarily confer a guilty verdict.
Mr. Scorpio, isn't it true that cases that are even in part based on circumstantial evidence are often kept open? Not to exonerate the accused, but to find more hard evidence?
That's right.
Which means that evidence could still be found that would further implicate the defendant.
No further evidence has been found.
I did not ask you that.
It's conceivable that further evidence against Mrs. Spencer could be found.
And how would you feel if it were?
I don't understand the question.
Isn't it true that you have a personal relationship with both the defendant as well as her husband?
Objection, Your Honor. The prosecution is impugning the motives of the witness by implication.
Your Honor, the commissioner was brought in as a witness for the defense. We deserve to know the true connection between him and the defendant.
Objection overruled. You may answer the question, Mr. Scorpio.
I know Luke and Laura Spencer, but I wouldn't characterize our relationship as personal.
Isn't it true that you've been to their home on several occasions?
Yes, but that doesn't...
And they've been in yours numerous times.
A few, but that doesn't mean...
And your niece, Robin Scorpio, who lives with you, isn't she a co-worker of Laura Spencer's at the Charles Street Foundation as well as a close friend of hers?
Yes.
Thank you. You've been a big help. No further questions for this witness.
Redirect, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
Mr. Scorpio, if you believed a very good friend of yours had committed a crime, what would you do?
I object. What does the defense expect the witness to say?
Your Honor, the prosecution opened this door when she brought up the issue of personal relationships.
Objection overruled. Continue.
Would you like me to repeat the question, Mr. Scorpio?
No need. If the evidence were there, friend or not, I would make sure that he or she were prosecuted to the full extent of the law.
Now, there's been testimony offered, none of which the defense refutes, showing that Laura Spencer hated Damian Smith, in fact, threatened him. I'm curious, did you know, Mr. Smith?
Objection, Your Honor. What possible bearing does the acquaintance of the witness with the victim have on this case?
Goes to dispute the prosecution's claim of Laura Spencer's motive, Your Honor.
I'll permit Mr. Ward to try to make the connection. Overruled.
I knew Damian Smith well enough to completely loathe the man. I didn't lose any sleep over his death.
You weren't alone.
There wasn't an honest, decent bone in his body. He was strictly a user, and I was just one of the many, many people he used and abused who ended up hating him.
Damian Smith wanted to destroy everything my grandmother loved and lived for. He was an evil man.
Damian was out to hurt my entire family. It wasn't someone I turned my back on.
Damian was attractive, seductive, and totally immoral, and I got to learn that up close and personal. Before he was actually murdered for real, he faked his own death and tried to set up his old girlfriend, Catherine Bell, as the murderess. I proved he was still alive, and so then he tried to kill me. Luckily, I was rescued. But Damian truly was a menace to society.
Damian's idea of love was completely warped. He tried to frame me for his own phony murder so that he could rescue me at the last minute. And then he left me all his money. I guess so that I would always be grateful to him, which I am. Sometimes he wasn't so bad. I can tell you one thing. Wherever he is laughing at the mess that he left behind.
His idea of sport was to buy up Charles Street, including the foundation and Ward House, and turn them into a shopping mall, which he intended to name after himself. Of all the arrogant notions. When I heard he was dead, I felt only relief. The world, and especially Port Charles, is a better place without Damian Smith.
If it pleases the court, in the interest of expediency, the prosecution is willing to concede that Mr. Smith was not a popular man. Now, I hope that the defense will get on with its case.
I'm going to adjourn for the rest of the day. Court will reconvene tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. sharp. And once again, I remind the jurors not to discuss this case among yourselves or with anyone else. Thank you.
All rise.
Thank you for getting up there and saying what you did.
Laura, believe me, we were just glad to have the chance.
The jury needed to know the kind of feelings Damon inspired in people.
Hey, I tell you what, we gotta go grab Justus before someone else does.
Yeah.
Let's go talk to him.
Bye.
See you.
Bye. Justice.
You got a minute to talk about the campaign?
Yeah, what's up?
Well, not the polls, not after last night's debate.
Yeah, I know I could have been a little stronger on the bond issue.
Fortunately, that's what the Herald said this morning. But Justice, we know how important this trial is to you. But can't you find a way to, I don't know, delegate some of the research and legwork to an assistant? That way you'll free up some of your time for the campaign?
No, all of my attention, all of my energy has got to be directed on this trial.
Well, there is an upside. Winning this case could help your campaign.
Well, there's a lot more riding on this verdict than my counsel seat. Look, excuse me, all right?
I'd call it another draw, Counselor. Nice effort, but you know you can't win with a tie.
Oh, says who? Burden of proof is on the prosecution. Ties go to the defense.
In theory. In practice, it doesn't always work that way.
Well, it's a moot point, Counselor, because we're not going to tie. We're going to win. Look, what she said is wrong. Tie means reasonable doubt. Reasonable doubt means you go free.
Well, if you have another couple of days like today, you'll have Miss Prosecutor on the run.
Hold that thought. Hello, how long have you been here?
Only a little while. I couldn't get away from the hospital.
Well, I've got some papers to deliver. Why don't you walk with me? You two, don't go anywhere. I'll be right back.
We'll be here. What's the matter, darling?
What Justice said about reasonable doubt may be true, but I don't like playing it that close to the edge.
Does that mean you're finally ready to pack up the kids and hit the road?
No. It means that I'm finally ready to talk about putting me on the stand.
Any word from the lab on that videotape yet?
No, but I'll let you know as soon as I hear. Meanwhile, Catherine's waiting for me, so excuse me.
See ya. I think you better tell Justus what's on your mind, Angel.
I want to take the stand. Look, it is too weird to sit here in silence while troops of people come and talk about the defendant, Laura Spencer, and what she thought, and what she felt, and what she might have done. I'm the expert on Laura Spencer. I'm right here.
I understand your frustration, but as your attorney, I'm advising against it.
Why?
Well, for one thing, if you get on that stand, she's going to goad you about Damien and Lucky.
Okay, so I'll work on self-control.
Well, there's a bigger issue. Look, right now, the prosecution can't introduce any testimony concerning the other deaths that you were involved in. Now, if you take the stand, there's a chance she might get at least a part of that admitted.
Laura was a kid when that first incident occurred. Those records are sealed. And the most recent one was self-defense, and no charges were filed.
Can you imagine how Dara is going to make that sound to the jury?
It's your decision to make, babe.
I guess we can't risk that. I do think it makes me look guilty, though, not to speak on my own behalf.
Look, I will call you to the stand as a last resort, but I'm telling you, my back has really got to be up against the wall.
Well, if that happens, we'll do whatever it takes to get my wife off.
Meaning what?
Meaning just what I said, Justus, whatever it takes.